Good morning. Thank you for dialing in and watching this podcast. My name's Alan Arthur from the GTMA. We're a trade association based in the UK, serving the UK manufacturing supply chain. This morning, I'm talking to Paul Wallace, who is the director of iCS, a business involved with supporting GTMA members. And in fact, they've recently come on board as business partners. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning, Alan. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Paul, I'd like you to, in the first instance, just really describe what iCS deliver as a service and how you position that in the marketplace.
Sure. So yeah, iCS was set up initially to support accountants and their innovative clients. So I suppose when we set it up, that was our main focus, and we provide services in sort of three key ways. So some clients want the full claim support where we do all the heavy lifting, and they basically just sign off at the end. Others who are sort of very familiar with the R&D scheme and maybe have been claiming themselves in-house for a number of years, we can provide a consultancy service to make sure that what they're doing is accurate and compliant. And then we'll probably come on to it a bit later, Alan, but HMRC are doing more inspections, and they're a very painful process. And we support clients going through that quite lengthy process to make sure that HMRC understand that there is true R&D going on.
Okay. I'm familiar with R&D tax credits or research and development tax credits, Paul. But what I've been hearing over the last maybe up to 2 years is that there's some reinterpretation of eligibility around R&D tax credits. And I suspect for some companies who are not involved and who are not benefiting from it, it may dissuade them from engaging. Is there anything you can say about that clarification on eligibility and any kind of reassurance you can give to companies about the interpretation that the HMRC may be applying?
I guess HMRC would probably argue, Alan, that they haven't changed the interpretation, but clearly what has happened pre-Brexit, the vast majority of claimants were SME companies, and before Brexit, the money came from an EU pot. Once Brexit's actually happened and UK Treasury are paying, I guess what's actually happened is that HMRC are policing the scheme much more robustly. So I suppose I'd answer it in a couple of quick ways. First of all, we all have a feeling for what R&D is, but there is a definition for R&D tax, which is slightly different. So HMRC would argue they've not changed that, but in reality they have, and they're doing these much more inspections. So we think it's something like 20% of all claims going in get a detailed inquiry, but that clearly varies from sector to sector. So, some of these are driven by SIC codes. So, for example, retail. Anybody that's got retail within their SIC code, even if there's manufacturing going on, they're more likely to be pulled for an inspection. So does that sort of give you a bit of a flavour, or do you want a little bit more?
No, I think that's appropriate. It's really when I'm having discussions with members or prospective members at trade shows, this does come up in conversation, and some of those companies are very wary that they don't want to take advantage of something which is going to be a burden further way down the line in terms of any kind of audit and reclaim of monies. I don't think anyone in business tries to do or wants to do anything illegal or inappropriate. I think occasionally businesses can get themselves into deep water by doing something which they don't fully understand. So I guess this is impressing on them the value of your service, because that's an honest level of advice, a knowledgeable level of advice on whether they should be pursuing R&D tax credits or not.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose if you look at it, when we are introduced to a potential client, or even somebody who's been claiming already, what we're looking for, and there's lots of HMR speak here, but first of all, we're looking for what they call competent professionals. So do the people running the company and running the projects. How qualified are they? Now, that can be experience. It doesn't have to be pure qualifications, but ideally, if they've got qualifications in the field, that's better.
Yeah.
And then what we're looking for are the projects. We've got to look at things like baseline, technological and scientific advancements. Are there any uncertainties? So these competent professionals, if we were talking earlier about JLR, if JLR or one of their supply chain comes to one of your members and says, can you undertake this project for us? It might be something that's advancing, or ideally it's advancing the whole sector, but we have to identify that it is. So, for example, before a project, before a client undertakes a project, they need to look at what's the existing technology, what are the limitations of that technology, and then they can sort of, we working with them can identify, yes, there is a baseline, there are technological advancements, and there are definitely uncertainties as to whether this can be achieved or whether it can be achieved at the right price point. So these are all the sort of things that we're looking for, and that your members should be confident that yes, we can. It's quite a high bar now, basically, Alan. So um, to give you a sort of flavour for numbers, before they really started inspecting across large companies and SMEs, there were about 90,000 claims a year.
Hmm.
Already that's dropped down to 65,000, and HMRC expect that further erosion as well. So the reality is that there have been companies either erroneously or fraudulently claiming, and that's why they've been clamping down on it. But I suppose what we would say, Alan, is if members are confident that they are competent professions, which of course they will be, they are advancing the sector, there are technological uncertainties. Don't be afraid of it, but just maybe work with somebody like iCS to make sure that you're putting in an accurate and compliant claim.
Well, as business partners to the GTMA, obviously we can refer any queries or questions onto yourselves with no strings
Sure.
attached. So I'm happy for anyone who's watching this podcast or listening in or has been referred to it to contact GTMA and through our website or email addresses, and we will refer those questions on to you, Paul, for you to deal with.
Fantastic. Thank you.
If they want to come to you directly, what's the best approach?
Well, I mean, I suppose the best one is to drop me an email, paul at i-cs.co.uk. I don't know whether we can drop in that in at the end of the podcast. But I suppose the other thing that we tend to signpost to clients are some of the HMRC guidelines. So we don't expect people to read 800 pages of guidelines because there's about that number. But there are a few key things that we tend to say to people. We have an exploratory conversation. We send them links to these sort of key guidelines, and then we sort of have a follow-up conversation to make sure that we're both comfortable that there is a baseline and technological advancement, etc.
Okay, thanks for that, Paul. The final phase of this chat really is to find out from you what's coming over the hill. What should we people be aware of? What should we be aware of in this area that maybe will elicit other questions that come from our members?
Okay. Well, as I said, there's more inspections, and we don't think that's going to change. The other thing is that there's an ongoing consultation around what's called advance assurance.
Hmm.
So this has been around for a number of years, Alan, but in reality, very few companies have used it. So the idea is that one of your members that are maybe, well, it currently only applies to members who have never claimed before. So
Okay.
the idea was that they could send in something to HMRC, who would look at it and say, yes, that looks reasonable as long as your projects are around that particular area for the next 3 years, you can be confident that we will sign off your claims. That was how it was originally set up. In reality, what's happened is that very few companies have used it, but even of the companies that have applied, around half have been rejected. Whereas if you think about the stats, if you put a claim in without advance assurance, you've probably got a 80% chance of not being inspected. So people haven't used it. They're now doing this consultation to say, should we make it mandatory, or should we make it mandatory for certain sectors? So we'll know more about that in sort of the next 3 to 4 months.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Thank you for your time today. If anyone does have any trouble getting in touch directly with Paul, just go to the GTMA website under Business Partners, and you'll find the links through to Paul's company, iCS. Yeah, thank you very much, Paul, and look forward to speaking to you soon.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alan.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.